Hello and welcome to the show. Today I am super excited to have Chris Kyle with me. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, good to see you again, Ben.
So Chris, you're a business coach, speaker, author, e-learning expert, and you're committed to helping authors, thought leaders, and teachers light up the world with their message. And you're also the author of the Purpose Activation Blueprint. So we've got a whole lot to go into that aligns with that, but really excited to dig in. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here. Excited about the topic. So thank you, Ben.
All right. So we're talking about evolved men. I know you've done a lot of evolving in your life. Let's talk about your past history and some of those key points of evolution on the way as you think about them.
Yeah, it's a big question. The journey so far, I like to call it. I still hopefully got long way to go in my evolution, in my work, and deepening what I do in the world. So I guess for me, the arc for me is that I kind of bought the hook, line, and sinker of success is going to be going to a good college, coming out of that college, getting a great job in the corporate space. And, you know, I kind of, that's how the early part of my life is working really hard, working hard at school, coming out, then going into big pharma, worked for a large pharmaceutical company in marketing and in sales. And, you know, what shifted for me is I'd always had sort of an eclectic side, grew up in a hippie household and, you know, lived abroad for a period of time, but somehow I was just into the stability of, you know, the great job, moving up the ladder, you know, being a good performer, so to speak, right? Getting the kudos there.
Right.
But then really it shifted. I mean, the big first evolutionary step for me was to really take a look at my life inside corporate, you know, big corporate, you know, company, Allergan, big pharmaceutical company. They're the creators of Botox. And I just really took a hard look at saying, is this the life I want? You know, so I remember really asking that question. I'm here, I'm going in these different positions in the organization. I have opportunity to move up, and even looked at, you know, and joined another pharmaceutical company that had great potential to go into, you know, advanced, you know, higher management. So but then I got to this point of saying, this is not the life I want. You know, I had to ask that question. So I had to pause and say, okay, is this what I like? Is this what am I loving this? Is this firing me up?
The Botox feeling wasn't fulfilling.
It was not fulfilling. I had no wrinkles in my, no, kid, I didn't take any Botox, but I could just feel that it felt to me energetically in my body like a dead end. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I could have kept moving up and taken on more positions, but it felt like a dead end. And so that shift was a pretty important one, because then it had me looking at what would I want to do. And I wound up starting an adventure travel company with my then wife, my ex-wife now. And we totally took a complete left turn.
So I want to pause in that left turn for a sec and just key in on one of the things that you just said. You're talking about it felt like an energetic dead end, and I want to highlight that for a minute, because it notes that one is A, in touch with their body, and B, can kind of read those signals. And I think that's an important piece to highlight for someone who may be on a path that doesn't resonate with them. So can you explain what that felt like a little bit and how that was a signal to you?
Yeah, it's, I think at that time, remember, so for me, that's about 20 years ago plus. So really trying to understand what was going on with me. I think I was willing to take a step back from my life, right? So being on the assembly line, and you and I have talked about this kind of the automatic or default life, you know, I was able to just step back. I remember that, just to step back enough to ask myself the question, is this what you want to do? Is this really what you want to be doing? Is this really, so there was some mental reflection, and then some going in and some time alone to then just be with that question. And yeah, I guess the energetic body response was really checking in with myself with the question from my mind, but then really asking what does my heart want? Right. And I don't think I said those words at that time, but to really feel like doesn't feel like what I want. I can feel this isn't really inspiring to me and moving for me, doesn't light me up from the inside. So I didn't have the language, and the language I would use now is saying I really took the pause to go in and really ask the question and be with it, to sit with it, to let the answer come up from within inside, from my belly, from my heart, wherever that may be for you or any man checking in, is to just allow that to percolate. And it wasn't an instant response, but over weeks or even a few months, it was like, yeah, this is not, I don't want this. So it was that time. And I asked a few people, but I want to be really clear here. It wasn't like I was also asking all this advice and then trying to digest all that great advice and make a decision. Right. I really ultimately had to stay with, what do I want? What's going to be best for me? What's going to bring me alive, most alive?
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. And just, I think it's a good place to highlight that that's a great starting point to A, start with some introspection, and then B, key into how your body responds to different questions. So
right.
Let's get back to the regularly scheduled left turn you were talking about. With the...
That's good. The left turn at Albuquerque. But good. Thank you for pausing that, because sometimes I'll tell my arc of my story and realize, oh, well, that was a juicy piece that I didn't realize. And so, yes. So that turn, that shift, that checking in, that knowingness, okay, I'm going to take the leap. The leap was really about what would bring me alive, what would really excite me. And for me, it was travel. It was definitely the idea of an adventure travel company, an ecotourism company. I'd traveled a bit around the world to that point and just felt like, wow, if I could create a company where I'd be really inspired and excited about the kind of trips I was offering, let's do that, And we were actually thinking of doing kind of corporate trips too, taking corporate folks and bringing them places around the world. That never happened, actually. That was like the mind saying, oh, there's still some link between my corporate life, and that's another pause point is also I be willing, my advice to myself was, and be willing to burn it all down. Be willing to start afresh and go in a totally different direction. I know I was really worried about, I'd built something and some experience and some connections. How do I somehow keep that going? And the story I told myself is, oh, well, we'll do some trips, corporate type of trips. Never happened. So we got in. And so that launched me, I would say, really then on a much more entrepreneurial journey rather than a corporate journey. And look, I'm not saying that people can't stay within the corporate world and find organizations that are purposeful and doing amazing, offering amazing products or programs or services, and that you can fully align with. But it's hard. It's hard to really find that space for me and for lots of people that I know. And so the entrepreneurial call, calls many, and it called me, and it led me into all kinds of things. And I'll just pause there, but it left me heading into the direction of, I'm going to kind of keep following what feels most exciting, alive, and purposeful for me.
Did you have any mentors along the way when you were on this journey that helped you think about things differently?
Yeah, good question. That early, at least at this juncture, so this is in my 20s, mid-20s, I would say my best and greatest mentor at that time, still in my life, is my dad.
Okay.
So I feel super grateful to have an amazing, conscious, cool dad. So he was during those years particularly, he was my best and greatest sounding board, and my stepmother, his wife at that time, not my biological mother. And they were both just great at advising, giving reflection and feedback. So I would say that was really the greatest mentorship until later in my life, in my 30s, I started to seek out more mentorship actively with different people.
And what caused you to seek out more at that point?
And that's the next inflection point. The first was just really looking at what's going to bring me alive in the work that I do in the world, right? So leaving the sort of corporate space and the corporate ladder climbing, and really look at what is it that I need to do to be a better man, in a sense, how to be a better leader, to be more potent in the world. And I was realizing also at that time, my marriage was starting to fall apart, and the business that we had together, this travel company, really started to weigh on me and really both of us. And it was a lot to run and manage. So here's another inflection point that I think many men will relate to, is there was a crisis. I mean, there was I had a shift point in my life that was born out of impending divorce, business struggling, trying to look at what to do with the business and sell, so it felt like my life was sort of melting down, right? I was in crisis. And that was the point of then looking at, I need to do something for me here to get more clear, to do something for myself, to really see what the truth is in me. And so that was the inflection point of saying, I need to go in and do some internal work on me that's not related to business or relationship or whatever. And that's where I know you talked to another man on this in this masterclass, Boyce and Hodgson. And that's when my father, great mentor, invited me and suggested I go and do the Mankind Project training, which is the New Warrior Training Adventure. And I did that at 32 years old, and it blew my socks off, blew my doors wide open. And I was ready for it, though. You know what I mean? Like it. Yeah. He even invited me over a couple of years, and it took me a while to really realize I need something to shake me up, break me out of what little box I've put myself into. And it really opened me up. And it opened me up to being with powerful, grounded, fiercely loving men that held me in that space of going through this very intense experience. And I got really deeply honest with myself and saw where some of my patterns were fucking up my life. And that was the next big inflection point beyond the kind of leave the corporate space. It was really that.
Right.
That moment and that training. Yeah. That initiation experience, really.
I definitely identify with you using the analogy of the box. I actually just recorded the intro version of this today, and I describe, kind of a past iteration of myself where, you build these walls up around you and you have this like firm ego definition of who you are, but then that becomes a box that confines you as opposed to something that really serves you, and that confinement doesn't actually let people in and doesn't let happiness in. So, like you said, you have to like shake and break those walls and open up to allow yourself to evolve in that way. So I'm sure a lot of people can identify with that feeling of being confined and feeling isolated, and breaking those walls is kind of part of that process.
Right. And it seems counterintuitive in some ways of like, having to break out of something you can't see. It's more like, oh, I should be able to just navigate to it or just naturally move from here to here. Sometimes it's never, rarely ever that smooth in my experience, that there is this box. And one of the things, I'm not the purveyor or the generator of this term, but there is something about what we call the man box. And this idea of breaking out of the man box. And what I mean by the man box is really the cultural story, the cultural norms that we live in as men, really create a box around how we should be and act as men. And in that box is also what is the greatest success for men. And it's really for men and women, but there's a particular gender role box that men live in. And there's absolutely you could call it a women's box or the female box, but the man box is something that at times in our lives, we have to literally bust out of that. We have to knock down the walls and the borders of the box to really see something differently and to begin to claim really who we are as individual, beautiful, amazing, purposeful beings that have a gift to bring. And sometimes it won't be found inside the box as I'm sitting in that box thinking that the success for me is going to be based on money, power, or position somehow. Like that will be somehow the magic sauce or recipe for happiness, for a sense of fulfillment. It feels like we all talk about it, and maybe you've got I'm going to put it back on you, Ben. It feels like men are aware of this. Like we're kind of, even the everyday guy out there is sort of, we say these words and they get it, but I don't see a significant change or a willingness to do something about that. Like, well, yeah, I want to be fired up with what I'm doing and on purpose, but I'm going to go do this thing and it's all going to be about profit and I'm going to fuck over these people to get what I want. You know what I mean? Like, so there is this kind of like, yeah, I get what you're saying, Chris, but then there is a disconnect somewhere in there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it goes down to programming in our operating system, right? So, we can understand that there might be a virus there, or, we're living these conditioned societal norms or parental norms. I know one of my pre-programmed things that I need to work against is being risk averse, for example, that, the stable way is the way to go as opposed to not.
Right.
And I think it's the first step to become aware of it and be like, yeah, that's true. And then the second step to act into it, to kind of counteract that programming and rewrite it. So I think the awareness first is key, and that's where some people give up. But the counter programming is the necessary second step. And I think like what you mentioned about realizing what your gift is in the world. That vernacular is not part of the man box. You don't give gifts to the world, right? You plunder and you provide.
Right.
You're not out there giving gifts, right?
Right. That's right. You're out there. I like what it is provide and protect. You're out plundering the world, or getting your own, or planting your flag at the top of something and saying, I did it, it's mine. So I get it. And for me, the way, and I love what you're saying, and for me, how I hold it is that there needs to be a choice at some point. And this is the carrot that I'll hold out for men. That's really was the carrot for myself, is that there is something that out there that might provide a sense of greater fulfillment, a sense of deeper meaning, feeling more alive in the world and alive in my life, and then ultimately happier, right? I mean, there's so many studies going on, and so much work now around happiness. Positive psychology is exploding. So again, people have been hearing that and talking about that. But the carrot then is, if there's something out there that's beyond the box, beyond the success box, the man box, is that the pathway is that I must choose to be willing to do the work inside of me and knock down some of those walls and break down the boxes inside of me, not out in the culture, to open the space and the possibility for a richer, bigger, more fulfilled life to be available to me.
Right.
It's not going to just happen from the same way that I was thinking. It's not going to just naturally unfold. But it doesn't mean you have to go out and build that company and start this. It's just that you have to make a commitment to saying, I want to grow me. I want to grow me as a man. It is the thing that is, women have been asking that question of themselves for millennia, but certainly for the last 40 or 50 years, is I need to work on myself. That's all the self-help books. 80% of them are bought by women, and workshops and programs like this. It's like dominated by women that are willing to deeply work on themselves. And I think the call now for men is, are you willing to work on yourself to become a better man that will open you to greater fulfillment and happiness? You got it, but you got to do the work. You got to do the work,
Yep.
Simple as that.
And I think, to your point, something like the Mankind Project is great because it appeals to men's tribal nature that I know for myself and many men in our kind of digital age are very isolated. So getting together with men that can expose you to new ideas and provide a support and get out of those patterns of let's talk about fantasy football, let's talk about cars, let's talk about stocks, and are there for something more that can expose you to a different way of being is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just feels to me like brotherhood. I mean, true, authentic, beautiful, supportive, loving brotherhood. And I've sat in a men's circle in different cities around the country where I've lived for 20 years, almost weekly, at least every other week. And it's been huge for me, not only, like you said, for that sense of connection, support outside of my relationship, my primary relationship, right? That I've got a circle of men that know me, support me, and love me, and a place to bring my grief, to bring my frustration, to bring my anger, and to have it be held there. And so, I'm sure many of the men that you're talking about or interviewing, I mean, if you ask them all, I bet more than half of them sit in some kind of men's group or men's circle or meet regularly. And it's a huge shift away from the isolation, the loneliness, the lone wolf quality that I talk about in some of the stuff that I teach. that men really run that archetype, a lot, which is I got it and I'm on my own and that's fine with me. And at some level that creates another walled prison, if you will, based on that thought pattern, is that I got it covered. I don't really need help or support. And we do.
Right.
And I get it in spades from the men in my men's group. And it feels very rich as a place for me to keep doing, even at a little pieces, keep doing the work, the inner work, to help me ultimately be, better husband, better partner, friend, better business partner, all that. So I realize there is a lot of positive outcome from the work I continue to do in terms of my relationships and in my business and living my purpose.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think I resonate with that in terms of, I don't need anybody to take care of me, but that's kind of a fallacy. And it shouldn't all be put on a significant other, for example. So, if you have that support, you can show up as more of a man in those important areas of your life, and trust other guys to be able to hold that space, and that will help you step more into your authentic power instead of a kind of faker, less authentic power.
Right. And again, if you're not getting that reflection, really honest, sometimes brutally honest, fiercely loving feedback from men and or women, but in this case, we're talking about men's circles and groups. But if you're not getting that in your life, wow, that's a missed opportunity. That's also a missed opportunity for being better and growing in whatever you choose to do, whether it's leading inside your organization, creating the company that you want to create, doing some art project, whatever it is having that support and that feedback so that, you've got some way to navigate without it just being in your own head.
Right.
And part of the challenge in today's culture, particularly today, like today as we're speaking now, is a deepening culture of narcissism that I'm really scared and nervous about. It's like, again, more and more, it's about me and it's about getting my Facebook followers and my Instagram, kind of building the whole cult of personality of me. And without really good mentors, advisors, or support structure, it's easy to fall deeper and deeper into the narcissism trap. And it's not healthy. I mean, if somebody's already in it now and they're not willing to even listen to this kind of conversation, they're not even aware of it.
Right.
But those that are asking the questions, it is still for myself too. It's still good to look at, where am I falling into my own narcissism? And I'm not really awake to how can I bring more of myself forward in a way that is of service, that's a way that's really contributing to the world, that's being more conscious and aware as a man. And that's the antidote, if you will, and away from the continued cult of narcissism that's permeating our culture.
Right. And I think, that leads nicely into, that purpose work that I know is very important to the work that you do, and that notion of service that often when we ask ourselves, the question, what is my purpose? A better question we can ask is, how can I best serve? Because that'll yield a lot better answers than an epiphany we might be trying to shake off a tree.
Right. And it's really looking at the great triad that I consider the triad around purposes. What is my essence? How would I describe the essence of Chris Kyle? Or just have a feeling for that. And then what are the gifts and the talents and the skills, and what do I have to offer the world? How can I serve? And what is the world asking for right now? Right? Do you know what I'm saying? So that confluence of my essence, the gifts and talents, what I see out in the world, and then even a little bit, then what is my aligned actions that I could see being excited about that may meet some issue or ailment or something in the world that I might be able to help alleviate or solve. My two big things are, one is really helping luminaries, helping teachers and thought leaders and authors, even new folk, to help them bring their message more fully out in the world, how to light up the world with their message. And then the other piece is that runs parallel with that is is really helping men to grow and evolve and open themselves up to greater possibility for who they are and who they can be. And so feels like a lifelong journey for me. It's so interwoven with my life that even as I'm doing other things, there'll always be some level of energy toward supporting men on their journey. And, right now it's mostly with the Mankind Project, but it's also with my coaching and certainly working in the e-learning space, both with men and women, but understanding how to work with men in a different way, because I've been working with men for 20 years. I kind of know some of the traps and the nuances and the thinking patterns that I can really help with. So that's kind of my calling as people are investigating their own sense of their essence and their gifts and their talents and the actions they'd like to bring. I'm pretty clear about that. And the form will change. That's the beauty. Ben, it's like the form's in the way I give it, but I can really feel the current of what I'm giving and how I'm continuing to give it, even if it shows up in lots of different ways. In different
Right. Can have multiple missions, but the driving goal is the same.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
And my purpose is really simple. I mean, I have different statements and longer things, but it's that I'm a catalyst for growth and awakening for all beings. And that's it. I mean,
it's beautiful.
So, and the particular flavor might be more men than just, co-ed, but I'm also doing work in relationship dynamic with my wife. And so I guess it'll always be an unfolding. I know that. And then what is the next unfolding? And then trusting that rather than worried too much about the brand or how am I building this for the long term and then find that I'm 5 years into something that I hate, so I'm very aware of that. How do I keep evolving myself?
Right. I think it kind of comes back to where we started with staying in touch with that energy and understanding that that's part of that guiding force that works with the intellect, but not in spite of it, to help take those next steps and have faith that the intuition will take you there.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. I agree with that. And it's the hardest thing for me now is to really truly listen from inside and to really get and trust the answers that are coming from there, rather than what my mind thinks it wants or some pros and cons or what advising I'm getting. It's not easy. I mean, so I'm just saying that is that I think it's the pathway to being more aligned with what's true for you or for me. Right. And it's not an easy thing. So I make it a priority. I spend time in nature. I bring the question into my meditation practice. I journal about it sometimes, free-form journal, not trying to create some kind of cost-benefit ratio thing, but just really what is calling me now. And I'm working to be more and more aligned with it and listening, and then allowing my choices and my actions to come from that wisdom, that internal wisdom, the knowing inside. And I think if anything we've said here, if we can spend more time there and work from and act from and be from that place, boy, I think the world's going to be a very different place as more and more people come from that place.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm, working on that same cultivation of opening up that channel and turning up the volume there.
Right.
I'm sure it's part of the journey and is not binary, but it's the good work to do to get out of that ego space saying, oh, I should do this for my purpose. And then listening so you can kind of activate it from that heart center.
That's right. Yeah. And you're right. It's an integral approach. It's integrating the head and the heart and the body. So absolutely. But I think we live so much in our heads. It's kind of just easier. Like, hey, I'm going to let that go so I can listen more deeply and then bring the head online when the clarity is there. Right. I agree. So it's an integration of all three of the energy centers, body, heart, and head.
Yeah. Nice. So, tell us a little bit about your giveaway that you have for the audience, the Purpose Activation Blueprint.
Yeah, thank you. I think it'd be really, very appropriate for this conversation and this masterclass that you're doing is for me to give away for free the Purpose Activation Blueprint, which is an ebook that's really all about helping somebody navigate the conversation in themselves about their purpose and really helping them to not only find it potentially, but even more importantly, the ebook talks about how do I activate it in the world. how do I bring it out? So that ebook, there's even a little audio link inside the ebook that takes you to my co-author, Brandon Peel, has a little audio journey that you can take. So it's a little multimedia experience. So that's my offer to your community here. And I'm excited to be giving it to all of you.
Awesome. Awesome. And where can people find you online? We'll have the links, but if they want to learn more.
Yeah, just chriskyle.com. CHRISKYLE.com.
Nice. We'll really appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom and helping men evolve. Appreciate you living out your purpose with us here today.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Ben. I enjoyed it. Thanks for the conversation.